Alright, this'll probably be my final Labyrinth farming video of the year, but I'd be remiss if I didn't make a thief guide for the lab. Especially after the changes to the Signets trait, which was a major boon for TagDevils in the past. This means we're not pigeonholed into the Critical Strikes Traitline anymore, and allows us to pick up both Trickery and Acrobatics. I'll go over these two trait lines first, and then share a build for both the Daredevil and Deadeye Elite specs. My personal favorite as of late has been Deadeye, because you can share Venoms much more often, allowing you to get extra loot thanks to your teammates tagging. Let's start with the Trickery trait line, which is all about gaining extra initiative and getting bonuses from spending it. I'm opting for lesser caltrops, which will drop an AoE bleed at your point of departure, which is amazing for tagging mobs on doors, because all you'll need to do is dodge a few times in front of a door and you'll basically mark every target, especially if you combine this with your Shortbow 4. Bountiful Theft will do two things for us. It'll grant us and our allies around us vigor, which will increase the amount of times we can dodge, and maybe more importantly, steals boons from our targets. This can be particularly handy when you're fighting Steve, as he likes to steal boons himself. If you're going with Daredevil, I would suggest taking the Sleight of Hand Grandmaster trait so that you can steal more often. But for Deadeyes, I would recommend going Deadly Ambush instead, so that you inflict bleeding on your marked target, basically tagging them as well. Next up, we have our Acrobatics trait line, which will make sure we have permanent swiftness even when you're not playing Daredevil, and some extra vigor, which always comes in handy. I opt for the Pain Response trait, which removes the damaging condition from us every time we dodge. This can be really handy when you mess up and get hit by certain bosses or too many mobs. Next, we take Hard to Catch, which will refund endurance each time we shadow step. This will basically let you dodge more frequently by simply spamming Shortbow 5. And our Grandmaster trait is once again dependent on whether you'll be playing Daredevil or Deadeye. Assassin's Rewards will grant some extra sustain to both of the elite specs, and should be taken when you're playing Daredevil. But for Deadeyes, I would recommend going for Don't Stop, so you'll never get rooted and fall behind the group. Daredevils have this already baked into one of their Grandmaster traits, so they don't need it as much. And this brings me to the elite specs, and let's kick things off with Daredevil. The first two traits are some general buffs to your HP and power. The Grandmaster trait is what will define your playstyle. If you wanna go ultra fast, never get rooted and always be ahead of the pack, go for Unhindered Combatant. This will turn your dodge into a long range dash and cause you to never get rooted or be able to cleanse it immediately. Personally, I tend to outrun the group way too much with that trait, so I've been trading it in for Lotus training instead. This will turn my dodge into an AoE tagging skill, which combines amazingly well with the caltrops we picked up earlier. If you go this route, you might want to take Don't Stop from the Acrobatics trait line, just like Deadeyes do. If you want to go for Deadeye instead of Daredevil, you'll want Burst of Shadows, which causes an AoE explosion when your target dies. And if you remember us taking the trait that inflicts bleeding whenever we mark a target, well, if you mark a low HP target that dies before you get to fire your Shortbow, you will still get credit, and this will in turn tag all of the enemies around that initial target as well. Payback is the bread and butter of our whole kit. Every time a marked target dies, your skills will get their cooldown reduced by 20%. This trait combined with 2 poisons will make it so that your team is doing half of the tagging for you. Our final trait is Be Quick or Be Killed, which will ensure we have permanent quickness uptime, increasing our Shortbow attack speed. I would advise against the Fire for Effect trait, because you don't want to be stacking might when you're tagging regular enemies. When it comes to the utilities, I tend to pick a different set depending on the elite spec as well. I like to go all in on Daredevil's mobility, so I'm picking up Channeled Vigor as a heal, which will refill part of your dodges every time you use it. This means you can even use the skill at full health if you simply want more dodges. Just make sure you won't be taking excessive damage in the next couple of seconds. Signet of Agility will allow us to cleanse 3 conditions and will also refund part of our dodges, allowing for even more dashing or throwing daggers. For the final 2 slots, I tend to pick up utilities that help with doors and boss damage. For me, these are caltrops and Prepare 1000 Needles. Dagger Storm will be our elite skill, which will make us evade all attacks and tag everything around us. If you want to play Deadeye instead, you'll want to keep the elite skill but swap out all of the other utilities. I like the extra passive healing from Signet of Malice, but if you want a condition cleanse, you should take Withdraw instead. Mercy will let us reset our mark's cooldown in case we mess up and our marked target doesn't die, and it'll refund some of our initiative when we're fighting Steve or any of the other bosses. Our final 2 slots are dedicated to Spider and Scale Venom, which will both be shared to up to 5 allies around us. This, in combination with Payback, will let you virtually tag every enemy even if you fall behind or if some people in the group are running way too high damage. When it comes to gear, I made a few changes for myself this year. I've opted for a full Trailblazer set, which has no power stat, making it ideal for tagging mobs, while still heavily investing into condition damage, helping me take quicker care of any of the bosses. If you don't have a Trailblazer set, but you do have a Ritualist set, that would work equally fine. But don't feel forced to buy either of these stat combos. If all you have is a Berserker set, simply don't equip any trinkets. The 2 sets I'm proposing will allow you to keep your trinkets equipped, however. The runes in your armor don't matter as much, but if you do have a choice, anything with extra condition damage or boon duration will serve you quite well. My tagging weapon of choice is of course a Shortbow. Shortbow 1 bounces from target to target, making it one of the best weapons for the lab in the entire game. If you want to be considerate of your group, turn off the auto attack when you're tagging by control right clicking the skill. I personally don't care as much for Shortbow 2 and 3 in the lab, but Shortbow 4 is equally as important as your auto attack. This skill will place down a poison field, allowing you to get early tags in on doors. And something that is often overlooked is that the poison ticks cannot be blocked. This is particularly great when you're fighting those skeletons who can raise their shields and block all attacks, causing you to not tag them. Shortbow 5 is of course our teleport, which interacts pretty well with the Trickery Traitline. I run Sigils of Stamina and Fire in my Shortbow, so that my endurance gets refilled every time an enemy dies, and I can tag in an AoE around my initial target. In my second set, I either go for Dagger Dagger or Pistol Dagger. Both would come with Sigils of Bursting and Agony for some extra condition damage. This is the set I swap to when I'm fighting Steve or any of the bosses. The playstyle for both is the same, just spam 3. And finally, we have our Relic. When playing Deadeye or the Lotus Training Daredevil build, you'll want Relic of Speed so you never fall behind. But if you're playing the Unhindered Combatant Daredevil build with the long range dashes, you should never have trouble keeping up. In fact, you'll be more worried about constantly outrunning the group, so a Relic of Speed isn't strictly necessary. And I've been having a ton of fun with Relic of the Afflicted instead, which causes a Death Nova every time one of my targets die. This is great for more AoE tagging and quite often finishes mobs off if you only have a few members of your group doing the actual tagging. I will link all 3 builds in the pinned comments, so you don't have to sift through my video every time you want to look something up. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to ask them down below, and make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel and join my Discord for 24/7 access to me. It isn't stalking, I swear, or I think.